Hello, everyone. I'm Katherine Kreidler with the National Sports Media, and today I'm joined by Zack Meisel, the Ohio Sportswriter of the Year Award. And thank you so much for joining me today.
I appreciate you having me.
First of all, congratulations on winning. And what was your reaction when you found out?
Um, so to be totally transparent here, I was on the treadmill
Yeah.
and um, Dave called me and I saw his name pop up and I lost my balance on the treadmill. So no, I wasn't expecting it. There were a lot of I think we had 10 finalists in Ohio and certainly some really good competition. So it's definitely an honor, but did not foresee it coming this year.
Yeah, I bet it was a surprise. Um, so can you give us a little backstory on how you first got interested in sports and your journey to where you are now?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Cleveland, which I
Okay.
don't know if like nationally it's known, but it is truly as good of a sports town as it gets. You've got it's not a huge city like New York or LA, which have multiple teams and you can just choose your fandom based on who's good in that particular year. Um, Cleveland fans, they're stuck with the three teams that they've got
Mm-hmm.
and they're passionate and loyal. So I'm a kid in the 90s. The Cleveland Indians were just a powerhouse at that time. I got a little bit older. LeBron James lands with the Cavs.
Mm-hmm.
Browns have kind of been a train wreck my entire life. So
Yeah.
a little bit different there, but just it was impossible not to get swept up in what sports can mean to people, to a city. And so once I figured out that I could write, once I figured out that I was never going to be good enough to play, it was a pretty obvious career path for me.
Okay. So I'm from Cincinnati, so I'm very familiar with Cleveland. And I totally understand that you're kind of stuck with your teams. And Bengals, my childhood, they were never good. Recent years, they've obviously been a little bit better. Um, so I completely understand where you're coming from. Where did
But
you
there's something charming though, right? About
Mhm.
like, a city that's got two or three teams and it's just you love them and you hate them.
Yeah,
Like the Reds and the
exactly.
Bengals. There are ups and downs and probably more downs than ups, but you just can't quit it.
There's a lot of heartbreak, but you're a loyal fan. Where did you go to college?
So I went to Ohio State.
Okay.
I actually went to Michigan State my very first semester
Oh,
for
controversial.
specifically for the journalism program. And I was kind of dismayed at how it was presented to me to get involved. I thought it would take too long. There was a lot of competition. And I actually had a connection back at Ohio State where one of the first days I was on Ohio State's campus after I transferred, I was in the newsroom. So
Wow.
it was a really good move for me. I ended up getting to cover an Orange Bowl, a Rose Bowl, um, NCAA tournament, Sweet 16s and Elite Eights, and
Mhm.
that experience was just immensely valuable.
That's really cool. So how did you get that opportunity?
I just knew a couple people who knew people in the journalism program and um, allowed me to shadow certain people, which set me up to basically spend a year shadowing the sports editor and helping out with stories. And I think there was some personal motivation too, where I knew like, okay, if I'm gonna transfer this quick, I
Mhm.
have to make the most of this. My family was all like, "What? Like you've been at Michigan State for a couple months and you're already leaving it?" And I felt like I had to prove that I
Mhm.
knew what I was doing and I was making the right decision.
Okay. So you did journalism, was that your major?
Yeah, and then because I didn't want to graduate early because I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do, so I
Mhm.
stuck around and actually double majored in econ. And
Okay.
I think it is the most fraudulent diploma anyone has ever acquired. Um, because I was always terrible at it.
Yeah, that's funny. Did you have any internships while you're at OSU?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what. I mean, I worked for the school newspaper, so I was sports
Mhm.
editor and then eventually editor in chief. Trying to think. I actually interned. I'm here at Cleveland Guardians spring training as we record this. I actually interned in their communications department during college.
Okay.
Um, and then a couple companies that were like journalism startup things that I'm pretty sure are not around anymore. But I was just, any opportunity to write, I was taking it.
Okay, got it. So then after you graduated, what did your career path look like? What was your first job?
Yeah, so I had an internship with Major League Baseball out of
Okay.
college. And I was based in Cleveland, covering games, writing news, whatever came popped up. And then parlayed that into a full-time gig with them, working as kind of like a general assignment reporter for a few years, and then shifted from there to Cleveland.com, where I was covering Ohio State uh, football, and then the then named Indians. So
Mm.
it's kind of been pretty narrow career path, I guess, since college. Um, but yeah, and now I'm here.
Do you have a favorite story that you've covered or like any memorable moments at OSU or in Cleveland, anything you want to share?
Yeah, I have. I think the thing I'm best at and the thing I enjoy the most about this job is being able to write human interest features. I've always subscribed to the if I don't find this interesting, why would my readers find it interesting
Yeah.
sort of approach. So I'm looking for, someone who's had a fascinating background that people don't know about. And I have access to this person that the public doesn't have. So it's my job to relay that information. Um, so a few stand out. There have been some sob stories of people overcoming things that I've appreciated the subject letting me tell their story on
Mhm.
their behalf. So there was a clubhouse manager for the AAA Columbus Clippers who had a heart attack while attending a Browns game and
Oh,
passed away. This was about 2017, I think.
okay.
And at the time of his passing, his wife was actually pregnant with twin boys.
Oh.
So they never got to meet their father. And like I wanted to, if I was going to tell that story, it needed to like, it's such a delicate subject.
Mhm.
So I ended up, I sat with his widow and I talked to the family quite a bit, and ended up writing a letter to the sons about their father so that eventually, they're old enough they can read this and maybe learn some things that they didn't already know.
Yeah.
So that one, like some of those types of stories really stick with you. Um, you just want to do right by the families. And but then like on a lighter note, like I'll never forget this one. I got a tip one time that Woody Hayes, the infamous longtime Ohio State football coach,
Hmm.
had a secret cabin in the woods,
Oh.
two and a half hours east of Columbus, and I took a road trip. I didn't know where this was. I had to find it. I'm driving in this tiny town that um, had nothing,
Hmm.
and ended up at first pulling into the wrong. I wouldn't even call it a driveway. Like I'm driving up this hill. There's like not even really a road. Um, and I come across this house or cabin. Not sure if this is the right place. I remember walking around, like no one's answering the door. I walk around. I'm like, am I in the right place? And an entire wall is just covered in rifles. And I'm thinking, if I'm not at the right place, I might not live to tell about it.
Yeah.
So I hop in my car, I drive away, I pull into this other house where I can see people are home. And it just so happens to be the people who gave me the tip. And so they tell me, they hop in the car and they show me exactly where to go. We drive down the road. Again, like this is not even really a road. And here's this cabin that hasn't been touched in years. And I'm able to like paint this picture of where this super famous, well-known guy who was leading Ohio State to national championships would escape on certain weekends
Hmm.
and like be a recluse and just like there was a side of him that people didn't know. And then as I learn more and more, I'm learning he's got like distant relatives in the area and they all have like stories about this different side of Woody Hayes that nobody knew. So I remember working on that story for months and just finding out more and more and wanting to keep digging and then writing it and rewriting it and rewriting it. Um, and just like when you get something great like that, you enjoy the process so much.
Yeah. So were you able to meet him?
No, he was passed by this time.
Oh, okay, okay.
And then I think that's what made it more fun is it was like this wild goose chase trying to
Yeah.
find this place without having direct knowledge of what I'm looking for or what I'm gonna find.
Kind of like a mystery you're trying to solve, figure
Yeah.
out. That is cool. Um, what does like a typical day in your life look like?
I don't know that there are like I think
Mhm.
that's the beauty of the job is every day is completely different. I'm mostly covering baseball, so like from February to October, it's you're at a ballpark somewhere,
Mhm.
you have a list of people you want to talk to about various stories, you're juggling long-term projects that you like some of the pieces I just described are like things that take months, right? And
Mhm.
then you're juggling that with short-term stuff that you could knock out in an hour or two. And so it's tricky. It's trickier now. I have two children, so I have a 3-month-old and a 2-year-old. So
Oh,
um, that juggling is a lot more complicated. And um, yeah, I think there's never like a time to catch your breath, really. You're always because you're always thinking about the next story you can tell. So, a typical day in like the baseball regular season, getting to the ballpark at 2 o'clock, talking to people from 3 till 5:30, and then writing while watching a game, and then
okay.
writing some more and talking some more and writing some more and maybe sleeping.
Yeah. But I bet you get to meet a lot of really cool people and players. Did you ever like interview any of your favorite players or anything?
Yeah, I think like the you do a pretty good job. Like I think it gets beaten out of you like the spectacle of it.
Hmm.
Um, the one for me was those 90s Indians teams that I grew up watching.
Hmm.
And you run into those people all the time. Jim Thome, Kenny Lofton, Manny Ramirez, Albert Bell. Like these were superheroes to me when I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
Um, so like sometimes I'll take a step back and think about like how crazy that is that I'm interviewing these people, that I wrote a book about them, and like Jim Thome and Sandy Alomar wrote the forwards for the book. Um, but it's easy and maybe this is like I think sometimes sports writers can get kind of jaded and curmudgeonly and maybe it's because we don't appreciate those things where like this is all I've ever wanted to do. So
Yeah.
it's when you think about it, it's pretty cool, but it's easy to lose sight of that.
What would you say is the most rewarding thing about your job?
That's a good question. My friends think it's cool. My kid thinks it's cool. I don't know. I think it doesn't feel like work usually.
Yeah.
There are times when um you have to do some tedious stuff where you're covering a team that stinks and everyone's in a bad mood. It's the
Yeah.
easiest thing in the world when you're covering a winning team and everyone wants to talk to you because they're thrilled. Every day they love going to the stadium or the arena and
Hmm.
there can be some years where it's a slog. You're covering a team that isn't good, and you know that everybody in the room isn't going to be, they're either going to get fired or traded or released in the next
Yeah.
year or two, and everyone's kind of on borrowed time. Um, but usually, like you're at a sporting event that if you weren't there for work, you'd want to be there via your hard-earned money, right?
Hmm.
Like, if I wasn't covering this Cavs Celtics game, I'd want to be sitting in the stands. So I think I think just recognizing that, like
Okay.
it's a privilege. We have access to these people who, if we weren't doing this job, we would be idolizing. And I think it's so easy to just forget that.
That's true. And then my last question is, do you have any advice for any students, young professionals looking to pursue sports media, sports writing career?
Yeah, I think the answer to this question gets more difficult to formulate every year because
Mhm.
the industry changes so much.
Always
And
changing.
yeah, and in some ways I feel like it's harder to break in, and then other ways I feel like it's become easier to build your own brand.
Hmm.
I would just say allow people to make it be easy for people to recognize how passionate you are about what you're doing. And I said I read stuff that I find interesting and that I think other people will agree is interesting.
Hmm.
And that should be the same for anybody trying to break in. Like, don't feel like you have to cover the tedious nuts and bolts. You're trying to set yourself apart and stand out. And if you want a career in this business, it's probably because you're passionate about sports and sports writing or sports broadcasting or whatever it is. So you need to let that shine. And there are different ways to do that now. I didn't have to worry so much about like video production and podcasting and all the social media apps when I was coming out of college
Yeah.
15 years ago now, 14 years ago. Jesus, I'm old. But um, I think there are more avenues though to set yourself apart and show that you have something, some sort of talent or skill or passion that most people don't. That's how you're going to get on people's radars, and that's how you'll be able to sort of craft the role that you ultimately want.
Okay. That's really good advice. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was a great interview. It was great getting to know you.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. I appreciate it.